A reading from the Gospel according to John, chapter 18, verses 33 through 37. Listen for a good word from the Lord. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." This is the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. Thanks be to God. So as I was in the first grade, I remember a morning when my father was walking me into school. It might have even been that very first day of school that year. That isn't always an easy day, is it? You're coming off of an incredible, fun summer break. You're excited to see your friends and maybe even go into your new class, and the emotions are high. You might be nervous. Your mom has picked out your clothes for the first day, and maybe you love them, maybe you don't. Perhaps you are a bit scared because you are starting a brand new school. With all of this going on in the body and mind and heart of a young person, it can become a bit overwhelming. Big emotions are often difficult to handle. Well, there was another student whose mother was walking him into the building that morning as well. Apparently, his emotions got the better of him. He was on the ground, kicking and screaming and throwing an enormous tantrum. Now, even as a first grader, I could recognize the frustration on his mother's face as she was trying to console her son, calm him down, help him know that it was all going to be okay. She was also just all around trying to make the tantrum stop because everyone was looking. He needed to go to class, and she needed to get on with her day. So this whole thing just needed to stop. Now, I remember looking up at my dad right after we walked past them, and he had obviously taken note of the scene as I had. You couldn't miss it. And I remember that as I looked up at him, my eyes were wide in amazement. Mostly that this kid's mother had let him get away with this, because I would never have been able to do that with my family. And I gave him a look that said, what in the world was wrong with him? My father noticed me looking up at him. He leaned down and calmly said in my ear, "You know that's not okay, right?" You better believe that I knew that acting like that wasn't okay in my house. Everyone has moments when our emotions get the better of us, but there are certain expectations on how you handle things, at least in the King house, especially when in public. And throwing a tantrum in the middle of a busy walkway into the elementary school on the first day of school was not one of those ways of handling it. It was always clear to us. There were certain ways that we were taught to act and handle things when I was growing up. It didn't matter what other families did or how other families acted. In our family, we had certain values we lived by, certain things we did. And even if they weren't always explicitly stated, you knew them. They might be different from the way everyone else did things or lived, but that didn't matter. It was how we moved through this world as a family. And we gather in this way on this day of worship. And the wider church calls this day the Reign of Christ Sunday, or Christ the King Sunday. It is the day when we remind ourselves of the fact that because of the work God has done through Jesus, Jesus is above everyone and all else. We call him Lord of our lives, which means that everything we say and do, the way we live every moment of every day, must be filtered through the way of Jesus. We live according to the teachings and life of Jesus, doing everything we can to reflect the love and compassion and ministry of Jesus for the rest of the world to see. It may be different than the way the rest of the world lives. In fact, it most definitely will be different than the way the rest of the world lives. The way of the life and the family of the Christian faith is different. It comes with different values and expectations, but that is okay. It's good. We stand by and live by the simple yet profound confession that Jesus is Lord. He is Lord yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He reigns in our hearts and in our lives, and ultimately he reigns in the entire world. So the way we live must be different because it always points to him. Sometimes the way of Jesus makes no sense to people. They might not understand why you would choose to put the needs of others before the things that you want out of life. They may not understand why you would forgive someone who hurt you, even if they didn't say they were sorry, when what feels most natural is just to hurt them back. They might not understand why you devote yourself to living like someone who lived over 2,000 years ago, when so much has changed about the entire world. As Jesus stood before Pontius Pilate, it was clear that Pilate didn't understand Jesus. His way of life made no sense to this Roman governor. Jesus had been betrayed by Judas, one of his own followers. He had been charged by the Jewish religious leaders with blasphemy, of speaking profanely and spreading lies about God and about himself. But they knew that that wouldn't matter to the Romans. They wouldn't care if Jesus was saying something about God that the others didn't believe was true. They had to come up with something that would make the Romans afraid that Jesus was a threat to their control. So they said that Jesus was trying to be the king of the Jews. They made it seem like Jesus wanted to start a rebellion against the Romans. They knew this was something that Rome could not possibly tolerate. So Pilate asked Jesus outright, "Are you a king?" In Pilate's mind, kings work in a very particular way. They rule over people. They conquer and dominate people. They use force to maintain their power and control. If anyone tries to take away their power, they defend their kingdom with their lives. And if you feel you are entitled to a throne that someone else is occupying when you're a king, then you take it from them by any means necessary. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate wanted to know. Jesus' response was pretty straightforward, but anything but simple. "My kingdom is not from this world." And when he said that, I don't think he simply meant that he had a heavenly kingdom, some kingdom in this spiritual realm. I think that he meant that his kingdom, which is at work all around us, doesn't operate in the same ways as the rest of the world. This isn't just about the location of his kingdom. It's about the operation of his kingdom. Jesus is not a king like Caesar was king. He says himself that if he was that kind of king, his followers would be fighting to make sure no harm came to him. Instead, when the mob came to arrest Jesus and Peter pulled out his sword to defend him, Jesus told him to put his weapons away. That isn't how his reign works. If Jesus was like other kings, he would have raised an army to fight for him. Instead, he called disciples, who probably never intimidated anyone, and he sent them out in the world to bear witness to a different and better way. If Jesus was like other kings, he would have used violence as his method of rule. Instead, he offered healing and compassion to those who were overlooked by everyone else. If Jesus was like other kings, he would have tried to control and enslave. Instead, he said he came to set people free and to help them live life to the full. If Jesus was like other kings, he would have focused on judgment and punishment. Instead, he focused on love and forgiveness. By willingly taking the worst that the ways of the world could throw at him, and showed God's ability to love us anyway for the sake of the entire world. Now, someone like Pilate, who has a very specific understanding of what a king is and what a king does, the way of Jesus makes no sense. And the foolishness of the cross, Paul calls it, because it seems crazy to the rest of the world. In truth, it has always been the way of God. To many, it may seem like something new and different. In truth, it was that way from the very beginning. The world has simply forgotten. Understanding what is true and being called to the truth as Jesus' disciples, all of his followers are, is about deep remembering. It is about remembering what was once forgotten from the beginning of time. In the beloved Christian allegory, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, this point is expressed in what is basically the climactic scene. Edmund Pevensey has been condemned by the White Witch to die. She believes that what the story calls the deep magic demands it. It is what she believes makes the world right and just and what she's owed. But Peter, the oldest Pevensey child, is prepared to fight to prevent his brother's death. But the great lion Aslan, the personification of God in Lewis's portrayal, however, stops the entire thing. He asks to speak to the witch alone, and a decision is made to accept Aslan's life instead of Edmund's. The White Witch even believes that she will finally win when he dies in this great war against Aslan and the creatures of Narnia. Only the Pevensey sisters watch as the lion is beaten, mocked, made fun of as far less than a great king, and finally killed. But as the Christ figure in the story, it is of course far from over for Aslan. His bonds are loosened, he is resurrected, and the table of violence and bloodshed on which he is sacrificed is broken in two. As the girls experience Aslan resurrected, as they lay eyes on him, they ask what it all means. And he responds, it means that though the witch knew the deep magic, there was a deeper magic still that she did not know. Her knowledge only goes to the dawn of time. But if she could have looked a little further back into the stillness and the darkness before the time dawned, she would have read there a different incantation. She would have known that when a willing victim who has committed a treachery is killed in the traitor's place, the table would be broken and death itself would start working backwards. The way of Jesus rewinds the clock of time. It pulls back the layers of what is not useful and needs to be forgotten, and it uncovers what is really there when everyone else has given its way. In a strange way, like those with dementia who still seem to remember what is most foundational to them, those things that have been locked into their mind but were forgotten when other knowledge and memory took their place. In some strange way, that process seems to liberate us from all the lies we've been told, until what is most important is all that remains. That is what following the way of Jesus enables us to do, to remember the way God intended things to be from the very beginning. Someone said that to testify to the truth as Jesus did is to tell a different story with the way we live and move through this world. It's to show a better way than the way that the world lives, a way built on abundant and transformative power from the love of God. In the family of Jesus, we live by different rules. We live by the power of Christ's love. We know what it is like because the Bible tells us how others saw it in Jesus' own life. We see the better way in the healing and compassion. We see it in the way he gave attention to those the world overlooked. We see it in the way he forgave even those who nailed him to the cross, just as he forgives every one of us. The world will know that we are Jesus followers because we live out love like he did. With every act of kindness we offer to someone else, we live out his love. We show the world that Jesus reigns in our hearts. We point to a deeper truth, that the world may know it and remember it. A deeper truth that we all need to remember. Jesus is the King of love. His kingdom is not of this world. It operates on different terms. And thanks be to God for that and for the ways we have experienced his reign in our own lives. So let us live so that others can experience it too. Amen.